How about that being simple? I was trying to conserve energy, and yes, now we've got sound. So how about that? I was recording all morning and decided I wanted to save some energy, and so I saved energy by turning the sound off of you guys. Sorry about that, but here we go. At least we got it all fixed and ready to go. So, in any event, thank you very much for everybody showing up. Once again, this is an ad-free event, and we've had a really good week. A lot of people have tuned in to the last two videos that I made, so I'm going ad-free on this live stream. Even the recorded version will be ad-free. So, in any event, I am looking forward to our discussion, which was decided on by our Patreon supporters. And this is, where are we going to be colonizing first? What is going to be our first target? Not to explore. We probably are going to the moon first as far as human beings are concerned, assuming everything goes the way it's supposed to. And we get boots on the moon in 2024. It seems likely that we're going to be going to the moon first. But in any event, we're not talking about exploration. We're talking about colonization. What planet or where should we colonize first, and why? And there are arguments for all of these things. There's arguments for the moon because it's close, because, we can get support there fairly easily. There's a lot of resources there, resources that are important to Earth, that sort of thing. Mars is, of course, Elon Musk's primary target, and my personal favorite as well, to be honest, but for a lot of reasons, that sort of thing. And then as far as Venus is concerned, there's a lot of people who argue for that. And there's some compelling arguments for Venus. And I've talked about that in some recent videos, but I think that I'd like to actually have a discussion as to where are we actually going to colonize, not necessarily set up a base, not necessarily just like a research facility. I'm talking about humans to stay and not going back, or not planning to go back. In other words, a permanent colony where people will be born, live out their lives, and die. Where is that likely to be set up? So Framrick is the first to say, is it better to get the technology right and in low Earth orbit before colonizing further out into the solar system? Yes, I am a moon to Mars advocate. I do think that it's a good idea for us to get some of the concepts in terms of surviving radiation shelters, especially on the lunar gateway. And everybody knows that I'm an advocate of that as well, in terms of, surviving, radiation and the environment that mirrors an interplanetary journey. We should get the technology right, but that doesn't mean that we should colonize the moon. Should that be our first target for colonization? There's some big problems with that, with colonizing the moon. Does the Lunar Gateway add value for lunar exploration and developing the landing tech? Framrick, I believe that it does, and I'll tell you why. Excuse me. It's the temptation when you build a lunar base to give yourself protection against radiation is to dig deep, to dig subsurface, to build your radiation shelters there, that sort of thing. And you're never going to be completely exposed to the nonstop bombardment of radiation and cosmic rays in the same way that you're going to be on the lunar gateway. That's one thing. Secondly, there's gravity on the moon, albeit not much, but still there is gravity on the moon, and there is no gravity on the lunar gateway. To me, the lunar gateway is more like an interplanetary journey than a moon colony would be. But however, that is my opinion. And there are other reasons to have the lunar gateway besides that. Dr. Levin and I discussed the advantage of the Lunar Gateway in terms of it being a research station for us to drop our samples off at first. Let's drop it off at a small station orbiting the moon rather than at the moon colony, if there is a colony there, with risk of wiping it out. I think it would be better to have it for that regard. And also developing landing tech. You did mention that as well, Framrick. And yeah, I think that landing on the moon from the gateway, we're going to be going back and forth from the gateway down to the moon nonstop with our landers and possibly with the lunar starship as well. So I would say landing is also going to give us an advantage there. Going ballistic. Good day to you, by the way. Good day, mate. To Tir Anasazi. Thank you so much, by the way, to you folks down under who show up for this. I can't believe that you stay up this late to watch this. Thank you so much. Going ballistic just said moon will be a scientific colony. I don't see families raised there. I agree with you, going ballistic. I think that it is likely. The book Artemis does talk about raising families or, living out your life on the moon, that kind of environment. It was a really good book, but there's going to be some real serious drawbacks to it. Juhid says, I really do believe that we should test anything we can at the moon before sending humans to Mars. It takes days to get a person back to Earth for help compared to Mars. I agree with you completely. Getting people back from Mars is practically impossible. If the planets are out of sync with each other, it can take way more than 6 months to get people back or to get any sort of help, depending on the kind of propulsion that we're looking at in the future. So yeah, it's going to be a lot tougher to get support to Mars. As a matter of fact, it's going to be tougher to get support to Mars than it's going to be to Venus too. Venus will always, or well, most of the time anyway, be a closer target than Mars will be, and also a better target for abort missions. But I do agree that we should test stuff at the moon. Wormhole Alien says commercial interest in the moon seems to be increasing, especially with astrobiotics and rocket lab missions. Yes, indeed, and I'm very excited about that. I think commercial interest in commercial exploitation of the moon is something we should really strive for. The question should be, of course, is that something that should be a lasting thing? Are people going to want to spend out their lives on the moon? That could be an interesting question. What happens if somebody actually wants to stay there, falls in love with it? There are people who fall in love with Antarctica and stay there even through the long dark of the winter. They stay there for the long run and they love that continent. What happens with those sorts of people? It's kind of interesting. Okay, Tiranasazi, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your first name right, but I think that the psychological factor is important. The moon is close enough to have real-time voice conversations. Very good point. And the voyage is only a few days. The DV required to get to the moon, however, delta V required to get to the moon, however, is the same as Mars. On the other hand, getting from the moon back to Earth is much easier. That is actually very true. There is a little thing that I've been thinking about in terms of delta V, is the delta V from the moon to Mars can be improved by the slingshot effect of using the lunar gateway as sort of a trebuchet to give a little boost in its orbit to a ship heading to Mars. You might be able to get some free delta V out of that. But anyway, am I drinking Kool-Aid from that Boeing cup? This is going ballistic. No, this is coffee. I'm making good use of this thing. I'm making this thing believe that it has a use, that it has a purpose in life, leading it along the primrose path before I dash its hopes and blast it to bits. I can't wait. Okay, so in any event, got that out of my system. Okay, so Frammer, and by the way, the target is 40, for those of you who don't know, 40,000 subscriptions. I need 40,000 subs, and then I'm gonna blow that thing up in all of its glory for all of you to watch, as I used to do when I made my early videos. Elon Musk seems to be, says Framrick, seems to be in a race to Mars. Great idea, but does the technology need more practice in LEO or lunar scenarios? In my opinion, Framrick, yes. However, I think that in part he is kind of contributing to this with the resupply of the gateway. Although that seems to be a little bit on hold at the moment in terms of funding. Really pissing me off, by the way. I don't know if you guys got the news about that, but NASA gave some money to SpaceX just to say, hey, the thing's a little bit on hold, but here's some cash to keep you happy in the meantime while we work this thing out with resupplying the gateway, because Congress went and didn't give enough money to NASA for Artemis. I blame most of that on Congress, and I blame the rest of it on the damn SLS and how much money it's gobbling up. It's revolting. But yes, I would say that Elon is actually contributing to the whole idea of testing things out in lunar orbit. However, at the same time, he seems to be pushing super hard. He's still talking about 2024 putting humans on the moon. Wow. I can see taking a shot at cargo in 2022, 2024, human beings less than 4 years away. Wow, I don't know. It doesn't seem realistic to me, but who knows? I mean, who knows what can be pulled off in a few years. Okay. Oh, speaking of Artemis, I binged that book after the last live stream. Well, good. That was quite a book to binge, by the way. Okay, Cyclonic says I'd love to go straight to Mars, but that comes across as reckless. Yes, Luna needs to be the testing site before other locations. Once again, I agree. Baseball bat, the Blue Orchard. Framrick, I'm surprised. I would think you would ask me to cricket bat this thing rather than baseball bat it. But in any event, okay. All right, or end it to Boca Chica and stick it under a Raptor engine. Well, I'd have to go to Boca Chica first, but they might give me permission. Who knows? But yes, it would be kind of fitting. So yeah, once again, we seem to be talking about the moon being a testing ground, but not a colony. That sort of thing. Another space nut. Hello. So you're here between here and the White Dwarf stream. Well, thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you being here. Okay. Hey, I'll go for a cricket bat too, says Framrick, just as long as it gets boomed. Well, I'll tell you, I've been a huge fan of explosives. And here in the United States, I don't know how things are in Britain, but in the US, we are allowed to blow things up in a big way, especially in South Carolina. You can pretty much get anything short of a stick of dynamite in this state and really blast things into small bite-sized chunks. So in any event, so is it worth colonizing the moon or best to go straight to Mars? Once again, I would say moon is testing ground, colonizing Mars. That's my personal preference as far as I'm concerned. Use the moon as a testing ground, scientific research posts, mining stations, that sort of thing. But in terms of full-fledged human colonization, human families, that sort of thing, that should be Mars, in my opinion. But that's, once again, there could be other opinions as far as that's concerned. There's a lot of people who really are very pro Venus when it comes to human colonization. The gravity is a huge consideration on Venus. 1/3 gravity is going to take a toll on multiple generations of humans in ways that we really don't understand. We don't know what it's going to do to us over the long run. And so Venus having gravity very similar to ours seems like a better solution, whether or not we have to be in the sky or not. And there's a powerful argument for that. But should we spend more time trying to colonize low Earth orbit and develop technology there? Solar power satellites, O'Neill cylinders. Framrick, here's my problem with O'Neill cylinders. As much as I like them, I do think that they are really cool, and artificial gravity, everything that they can provide. These artificial, habitation structures, these huge things that where we can live, is the fact that they are entirely too vulnerable to attack. It wouldn't take much modification to make an ICBM that could hit an O'Neill cylinder in low Earth orbit and blow it to bits. And if we're talking about the long-term survival of the human race, and Elon Musk has actually talked about this, the further away we can get, the better. Mars is going to be a lot harder to send a nuclear weapon all the way to a colony on Mars. That the planets would have to be in right alignment, first of all, to realistically get, a nuclear punch all the way there, that sort of thing. So if we're talking about security, if we're talking about the long-term survival of the human species, I do believe once again that Mars, now an O'Neill cylinder orbiting Mars, maybe something like that. Yeah. So yeah, O'Neill cylinders, putting all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, it is kind of like that. Whereas you can have multiple, even if Mars were to get nuked somehow, you can have multiple colonies on Mars scattered across the planet in order to secure the future of the human race. So there's a lot of ways to make Mars into a second home for humanity. This lifeboat that Elon Musk talks about, it's a lot easier. I obviously never watched The Expanse. I actually have watched The Expanse, and yeah, if we're talking, they had some super badass missiles in that one. And yeah, however, Earth does get the short end of the stick. Oh boy, I'm spoiler. I need to shut up. But in any event, yeah, the Expanse does make the possibility of delivering nuclear strikes back and forth between the two planets possible. Still, that's a bit of a ways in the future before our military capability is going to be able to get to that point. But yeah, it is possible. Venusian floating city says Cyclona sounds like a disaster to me. Too many things to go wrong, and instant death if you fall. That's true. The system fails and you're gone. And it's not just the floating aspect. That's actually not what scares me the most. What scares me the most is people who have talked about my reservations about Venus and the fact that it doesn't have any water. They talk to me about, recycling systems and how we can create these enclosed habitats and constantly recycle our water. On the ISS, we have 80% efficiency, and we recycle the hell out of things there. And so far, the ESA has not been able to create 100% efficiency in terms of recycling. And if something goes wrong with that system, if something goes wrong with the recycling system on a Venusian city or a Venusian colony, that's really bad news, because without water, you're going to be in really deep trouble in just a few days. It could also create panic. So in any event, it's just, I don't know. I'm more inclined to places that have lots of water, and Mars has lots of water. It's not nearly as dry as we have been, led to believe over the years. The more we discover, the more water we find. Excuse me. Do you think, I've been asked, do you think nuclear tech will help colonization? Will it be too troublesome until we get fusion tech? Well, Framrick, to answer your question, I think that nuclear tech is not going to be freely given out by the Atomic Energy Commission. I think, as I've mentioned before, that only NASA and other government agencies are going to be permitted to have nuclear tech. But I could be wrong. Who knows? SpaceX does have a lot of clearance, a lot of military clearance. So maybe they'll give them reactors. I'm not entirely certain. Let's see. Tara's Anasazi points out nuclear reactors require cooling, which I don't think is easy to do without lots of water. Yeah, there are some drawbacks to it. Once again, my daughter is going to be able to tell me a whole hell of a lot more about nuclear engineering as time goes on. She went off to school just about a week ago. I'm missing the hell out of her already. But she is already starting on her studies to become a nuclear engineer. So I'm looking forward to asking her questions as my career goes on. So in any event, how long do you think it'll be before we send non-professional astronauts to other planets? Or are we trapped by the professional astronaut approach for another decade? We don't have to be. There are companies that are already looking at training astronauts independently. These are companies that were started by NASA astronauts themselves. So, excuse me. And so, there could be private citizens trained as astronauts, in a fairly short amount of time, a few months, and then get the ability to approach that. So in any event, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And yeah, going ballistic, I don't know about fusion. There's a whole lot of people who think that fusion's 10 years away and not 30. We'll see. I don't know. I hope it's only 10. That would be great. But once again, it's hard to say. A really good reason. Okay. Somebody says that we should colonize the moon first, says Tyrannosaurus. The reason is the moon is higher priority is helium-3 for fusion power. Yes, I would say that that's a good reason to mine the moon. Colonize it, not necessarily so much. You send up miners for a year, year and a half, something like that, bring them back so they can arguably adjust to Earth-type gravity again, that sort of thing, as opposed to having to stay there forever. But who knows? Some people might want to stay there forever. They might like the moon more than going back to Earth. Once again, hard to say. Okay, liquid sodium as another option. Okay, so yeah, lots of nuclear tech. Need to get something working well on Earth first, says Framrick. Nuclear technology is improving more and more by the year. My daughter is a huge believer in nuclear technology as the power of the future. If not fusion, then fission. Safer forms of fission. She definitely wants to use that as a power source to a much greater extent than we currently use it as. Once again, there's always a raging argument about that one. Okay, Framrick, does closed planetary exploration require a commercial, single nation, or multinational approach? I do believe that SpaceX, as long as they have some cooperation from some other companies, can theoretically do it on their own. I think if they demonstrate the ability to get to Mars, I think NASA will follow full bore. There's entirely too much for them to gain, and not just NASA, the ESA. Everybody is going to want a piece of that once Elon demonstrates SpaceX's ability to get to Mars. I think that there'll be an avalanche of space agencies that will follow, and will want to take advantage of that. And all of that is going to require more people going to Mars besides just professionals. As the more people that go, the more support these people need. I mean, the astronauts on the ISS spend so much time doing mundane tasks. As you increase the number of people and the number of habitation structures, You know, how long are you going to keep asking highly trained professionals to keep doing simple tasks when you can get other people to do it who want to go? You know, I mean, what's the point? There should be more ordinary people going, as well as highly trained professionals. So in any event, should we be tempted to terraform, close planets, nuke Mars, cometary impact, bioseeding atmospheres? Yeah, I mean, once again, there's a raging argument, especially Mars, in terms of how easy it's going to be to terraform that planet. I think it probably is going to take a fair number of time. Even the more optimistic estimates say several centuries. But nevertheless, I do feel that we should definitely give it a shot. Wormhole Alien brings up the fact that rocket lab missions are dirt cheap. Yes. A consortium of companies could do this. SpaceX plus a lot of other startups could colonize Mars without any government help. Nevertheless, I do think that that once SpaceX is on Mars, I think that these agencies are going to want to go. At the very least, the ESA, NASA, Japanese Space Agency, all these folks are going to want to go in a big way. Okay, so hoping for a photon kick stage Venus Zeppelin mission in the near future. Very interesting idea. And yes, I'm all for Zeppelin missions on Venus. And one of the big reasons I'm all for Zeppelin missions on Venus is because, as recent press releases have indicated, and I don't know why the hell people are saying that, oh, all of a sudden we know that there could be life on Venus. People have known this for a very long time. This recent discovery does add more credence to the concept, but the concept of there being life in the Venusian clouds has been around for quite a long period of time, several years, in fact, and this just adds further evidence to it. I'm really not certain as to why the media is talking about this as if this is some sort of brand new discovery and we thought there was nothing alive there before this discovery. Not at all. Not at all. There were strong indications of life being present on Venus before this discovery. As a matter of fact, I've put links in my videos about a video I released a month ago, and there have been videos released prior to mine about life in the Venusian clouds. So in any event, this new discovery is very exciting. Yes. And I think going to Venus on an expedition mission is critical. I think it's something that could really be beneficial in a lot of ways, if for no other reason than to find life. By the way, we have a lot of folks in the audience. I just want to quickly mention again, the way you participate is just being a Patreon subscriber. And then becoming part of the Discord community. I have instructions on how to do that in the description, and it's only $3 a month. And that's the minimum charge. You know, I'll certainly take more. Any support that this channel can get is helpful. But in any event, it's very easy to be part of this discussion, and it's only 75 cents a weekend if you break it down. So really not much to invest in. Plus, exclusive content. I'm releasing an exclusive video just for my Patreon/Discord supporters today. I'm almost done with it. I was working on it prior to this live stream, and it will be released within the next hour to 2 hours after the live stream is complete. Okay, so enough of the sales pitch. Okay. Oh, and please like and subscribe, by the way. This coffee cup is going to keep sitting here next to the to the Crew Dragon until I get 20,000 subscribers. So in any event. So best way to colonize: mass starship expansion or softly the NASA approach. We do things the NASA way. We're never going to colonize Mars. I think NASA help is going to make a big difference. But no, I do believe that we need to aggressively move towards colonization. There are too many clear and present dangers to human civilization. And we need to keep that in mind. There are many ways that there are many ways that our civilization could go under, that our species could go under. And I think Elon's sense of urgency here does make a fair amount of sense. Not to say that the world's going to end tomorrow, but it could. Nuclear war could happen now. So, and it always has had that potential. And given the current state of stress between ourselves, between the United States and Russia, American reinforcements were recently sent to Syria because of a couple of incidents between American and Russian soldiers. I have to admit, I'm a little confused about this. If we want to pull out of Syria, then we should pull out of Syria. If we want to go and fight there, then we should go and fight there, as opposed to sending reinforcements and creating the possibility of more conflict. But once again, stress and tension seem to be increasing between the United States and Russia again. And both of our countries have the ability to annihilate one another quite easily, and the rest of human civilization. So that being the case, we're not getting any younger as a civilization. And I think going to Mars there is a sense of urgency. So I am actually in support of Elon's approach rather than NASA's. And once again, this isn't because I'm 100% in support of everything Elon does or everything SpaceX does. I think if you've been watching me long enough, you know that I'll criticize SpaceX if I think they're doing something unwise. But nevertheless, as far as their basic goal, getting the human race to Mars, this is what we should be doing. Okay, FHM Consulting just talked about there have been breakthroughs raising the temperature that quantum computers can operate at. If breakthroughs continue, then using cold areas and craters for quantum cooling could make the moon feasible as a huge data center. Very interesting. It might explain why all the countries are suddenly interested in moon missions. Well, I'll be damned. I never thought of that. Thank you, FHM Consulting. And a link is provided here, by the way. Once again, this is on the Discord server, another benefit to membership. But in any event, okay, yes, all this talk of impending apocalypse is distressing. It always has been. Growing up in Colorado Springs, which is where NORAD is, Fort Carson, a major Army base, Peterson Air Force Base, the Air Force Academy. I grew up with the fear of nuclear Armageddon when I was very young. This is something I've just grown accustomed to. So in any event, but for those who don't live in this country, those who are not part of the superpower struggle that's been part of the existence of every American and every Russian for a long time, it's really distressing because, you guys don't have a horse in this race. You shouldn't, but you do. If we decide to go crazy on each other, it's going to impact the whole planet. It's, I don't know, the whole thing really pisses me off, but nevertheless, not necessarily. It is part of the subject. It's part of the whole reason why we should be colonizing. So what do I define as colonizing as cyclonics? What I define as colonizing is a self-sustaining human presence. In other words, a human presence where generation after generation of human beings can survive. Now, this doesn't have to be 1 million people. This could be a few hundred people. That would have the genetic diversity for the human species to survive. As a matter of fact, the ultimate way for the human species to survive would be to load, a few hundred people up on a generation ship and send them to another star system, assuming that we identify a planet that's definitely habitable. Bear with me. Excuse me. Sometimes need something cold on my throat. Okay, so Framric, what do you think a closed planet economy is possible? Or will Mother Earth always be supporting her close children? Um, well, in any event, I would say that that it doesn't have to be that way. Mars is definitely capable of being a self-sustaining planet. It doesn't need Earth. The technology exists now for Mars to be self-sustaining. It's easier. It's easier for these other colonies to be dependent on the mother colony, but at the same time, it's not desirable if your objective is to become self-sufficient and for Mars to be, or wherever, Venus, whatever, to be a lifeboat, then it needs to be self-sufficient. It needs to be not reliant on the mother planet. Sci-fi writers decades ago talked about life in the layers of Jupiter, speculated in the past. Yes, and this is and I'm sorry, a Sanatogen. I may be mispronouncing your name. Sorry about that. Excuse me. I haven't seen you a great deal, but I have seen you before. Welcome, by the way. Thank you for coming back. Yeah, the not just sci-fi writers. Carl Sagan discussed that. Floating types of life forms in the atmosphere of Jupiter, floaters and hunters and that sort of thing. There's an immense amount of radiation from in the clouds of Jupiter. Saturn makes more sense, a lot less radiation. This would have to be a very different type of life. But perhaps it depends, I would say, on what life can breathe in order to survive. If we determine on Titan that methanogenic life can survive, that is to say, life that breathes hydrogen and exhales methane, that really broadens the scope of what can survive. Starship provides the railroad, says Framric. We should encourage other companies and nations to use the railroad. Yes, indeed. We seem focused on Earth-only initiatives. Yeah, that's true. That's always our justification, isn't it? We need presence in space so we can help people on Earth, because that's the only way people on Earth are going to vote for it, isn't it? So in any event, yes, but yes, that's something that's going to be necessary, I think, for a long time is to justify space by showing the benefit that it brings to Earth. Otherwise we're just not going to get the necessary support to go to space. Yes, Terry Anasazi, I do remember the day after. I also remember Threads, by the way, which was even more terrifying. And yeah, that's awful stuff. Awful stuff. And by the way, the day after was way more mild than the real thing would be. So anyway, maybe we stop talking about nuclear war, awful stuff. Okay, we have a horse in the race for whatever reason, says another space nut. We love to poke the reds for you guys. Just second generation proves you can survive there. At that point, it's a done deal. Yeah, that's true. If we can get a second generation at Mars, it does prove that we can survive. So we do need to be working on that. Okay, based on my definition, Mars is the first colony because of the distance. Moon is too close for generational colonies. That's one reason. The other reason is gravity. 1/6 is different than 1/3. Radiation is also a difference. There's a lot less radiation at the surface of Mars than there is on the surface of the moon. That's another consideration. I believe there's substantially more water on Mars than there is on the moon, too. There is a lot of water on the moon, according to our best estimates, but there's a hell of a lot more water on Mars, a lot more. So I think there's actually a lot of things that give Mars an advantage. Excuse me. Terrence Nazi says, I have a hard time imagining any permanent off-planet colony that doesn't offer its planets a habitat with its own biosphere. Yeah, that's, well, I think as colonies grow, they are going to offer biodomes, biospheres, that sort of thing. I think that that's going to, as time evolve, become more of a reality. Terraforming lava tubes, that sort of thing. I also believe, by the way, as Dr. Levin believes, that our planet is part of a giant biosphere. It's not very obvious, but that Mars and Venus, we all exchange life with one another through transpermeation, or because life evolves that naturally. I think that as we move out into the solar system, we're going to discover that we're part of a huge biosphere. There's, of course, not nearly as much life on Mars, but we're going to find that there is life on Mars and Venus too. I really believe that they'll be there, and that we're just going to, become part of a biosphere that's always been there, and just integrate ourselves with it as we integrate ourselves into our own biosphere here on Earth. Australia is tied to FHM Consulting. Australia is tied to the U.S. military intelligence because of our location. Last report, 5 potential targets in a nuclear war. Horse in our race as well. Yeah, that's true. 5 targets is different than tons, though. Australia could survive 5 nuclear hits if Russia only unleashed 5 nuclear weapons. Australia, I could conceive 5 bombs. I can't conceive hundreds or 1,000, and what that's going to do to the planet. And even places without military targets at all, like New Zealand, they're still going to suffer as a result of it because of nuclear winter. It's going to be devastating no matter who it is. So there's everybody has a horse in the race, unfortunately, because of this. Okay, Cyclonics, I think that the next logical step after Mars colonization is Ceres. Yeah, that's a good point. Full of water, very easy to get to. Outpost to the belt. Yes, Ceres does make a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, that's NASA's plan. NASA currently has it laid out, and I did a video on this on Venus, just in terms of doing an easier interplanetary mission, then Mars, then Ceres. So spreading out into the solar system very logically. Ceres, of course, having such an immense amount of water, more water by last estimate than Earth has. That one asteroid has more water than the entirety of Earth. So yes, I would say that Ceres makes a great deal of this. Sorry, I won't mention that movie again. Oh, Ettrig, hello. I think you may be brand new. I don't know. If you are, welcome. Boot up cost is huge. Need to choose lowest cost, highest economic potential. Asteroid mining. Well, I can see mining asteroids. I don't see colonizing asteroids. Excuse me, not unless you never want to come back, or unless we can create artificial gravity. Let's see. It's also too close to the Earth that if we nuke Earth, we would screw the moon. Yes. Well, we probably would anyway. Okay. Framrick says, do you think bringing up children on the moon, Mars, Venus colonies will create a subspecies that can never return to Earth, or should we not worry and just expand into the solar system? Yes, I do believe that. Now, Venus, because of the similarity of gravity, I think Venusian children could come back very easily. I think that we are creating the potential of a multi-generational colony on Mars of people who can never come back. So, that being the case, yeah, that kind of sounds grim, But at the same time, Mars is a place of wonders. The solar system is a place of wonders. Just because somebody can't come back to Earth, yeah, maybe that's awful. But right now, we're stuck to this one planet. We can't see the Valles Marineris. We can't see Olympus Mons. We can't see the rings of Saturn in person. There's so many places that we can't currently see trapped within our own gravity. So maybe it's not as horrible as we're thinking, not coming back to Earth. Now, of course, if we do find ways of, medically and technologically dealing with the gravitational differences, then maybe coming back to Earth will be a possibility. From a genetic standpoint, or who knows? There's a lot of different ways that perhaps maybe that can be changed. Okay, I've got some catching up to do. Is it worth crashing a few comets or near Earth asteroids into or near Earth objects into Mars to speed up rotation and depositing more useful materials into the surface? Says Framick. I really don't know. Ettrick says speeding Mars rotation will not increase gravity. I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, of crashing things into Mars, huge things. We know that Mars is geologically active. We start putting comets and other massive asteroids into that planet. Who knows what's going to happen? I would say that we need a good geological understanding of that planet before we really start pounding it. I think that we might want to be careful about that. Another space nut just put up the massive wall of fire reaching 89,000 degrees surrounding our solar system, the heliosphere, 89,000 degrees. My, very interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out. What will be interesting is the interplanetary objects that make their way into our solar system. I wonder if there's a lot of evidence of them being scorched 89,000 degrees. Dear Lord. I can't imagine what that would do to an interplanetary object coming into our solar system. In any event, I'm interested in that. I'm definitely going to read it. Framrick, what species do we take with us to the close planets? A Martian giraffe, or do we take the practical organisms only? Framrick, that's an interesting question. I actually believe that, giraffe neck on 1/3 gravity. Yeah. I would say that that there's a very good argument to be made for pets, breeding pets on Mars, that sort of thing. There are strong psychological reasons to have pets. So nevertheless, I would say that at least that sort of thing would probably be a good idea. Okay, so we're still talking about spinning, pulling the pull of the Earth, etc., or spin. Once again, I'm not a big fan of crashing massive objects into Mars. It's just my feeling as far as that's concerned. Until we understand its geology, I think we need to tread sort of lightly on that. So now smaller objects, obviously Mars has been impacted before. So smaller objects make sense, but great big ones, maybe. Centripetal bases as nurseries for children sounds like a best way of growing up in low gravity, says Cyclonics. So the children, and I'm assuming then their families, all have to be in these kinds of places as their children grow up. That's interesting. That would create a very different social structure. But if necessary, yeah. Do I think genetic engineering and Neuralink will help us colonize the solar system, adapted humans and other species combining tech? Well, definitely, Framrick. Absolutely, I believe that. I think that that's definitely going to make a big difference. Okay. Another space nut says he spent 30 years on Earth once, will not be back. So yeah, and I would say that there's going to be a lot of people like that. Okay, so understatement of the year. Not a big fan of crashing things into Mars. Yeah, once again. Well, everybody knows my opinion on that one. Okay, FHM Consulting. The advantage for the disabled on Mars is low gravity. If you're physically disabled, Mars would be very attractive. That's really true. If you're suffering from those sorts of things, the moon might even be better. So those sorts of things are going to that's actually incredibly attractive. It would make people who struggle to move on Earth mobile for the first time in their lives. That would be a wonderful thing. Better to assemble a new planet from the asteroid belt than to destroy existing ones as going ballistic. I would tend to agree. Okay, Framrick says, should we establish gravity waypoints such as orbital stations around Mars and the Earth to help the movement of people? I think we've talked about that. It would make some sense, but once again, we need to make it absolutely clear. Absolutely, this is a long-term thing that we're talking about. People would have to stay in these environments for a really long time in order to be able to just return to Earth, by the way, or Venus, I guess. Because if you're on Mars with 1/3 gravity, that would allow you to go pretty much any place else in the solar system. And by the way, somebody made up the point that Voyager and Voyager 2 made it through the heliosphere. So yeah, I don't know about that. So yeah, proposing crashing Deimos into Mars, go for the Thanos option. And there's I'm totally taking my cat, says Tiranasazi. And you know what? Why not? I say. I say if humans are going to go, once again, anything to make this journey more tolerable from a psychiatric standpoint, the better. If we can breed pets, and if you're willing to pay for it, I mean, if there's a cost per kilogram involved and that sort of thing, then why not? FHM is going to take a pet rock. I think you'll have all the pet rock you want there. A scorpion or something exotic. I used to have a turtle. Excuse me. Once again, we have a lot of people watching. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, to re-emphasize, if you want to be part of this discussion, just go to the description. You know how to do it. Become a Patreon member, become part of Discord, and you can participate in this. Please like and subscribe. Okay, let's keep going. Genetic therapies are just taking off. And Elon is getting involved with it. Yes. It does make a lot of sense, wormhole alien, that Elon is getting involved in this because he wants it to be easier for the human race to expand out into the cosmos. I think that does make a great deal of sense. Cats on Mars, a Doctor Who episode. Is a Mars cycler a good idea? Sorry, I just lost you there. Have a permanently transiting vehicle that cycles between Mars and Earth, leave Earth, join the cycler, drop off on Mars. You know, there are some some extreme difficulties with that. And that's, of course, the relative positioning of the planets. Moon, Earth, that makes a lot of sense. Mars, Earth, it constantly varies by tens of millions of miles between the two planets. So it might be kind of difficult. And yes, Seeker of Knowledge points out that NASA's super mice gain muscle and bone mass. Yes, I did read about that experiment, and that could be a solution for the future. Fourth generation Mars scorpion, growing 4 foot tall after growing up in mass in radiation. Oh dear, here we go with 1950s sci-fi post-nuclear things. Okay, so in any event, Alien Zookeeper, thank you, by the way, for being part of the stream. I really do appreciate it. Just imagine a cat in zero G, says Tom. Yeah, they would freak out. There's little question of that. But once again, animals are adaptable. I mean, they sent dogs up, the Russians did, and some of them survived. And I think the reason some of them didn't was because of reentry and not because they couldn't handle zero G. So in any event, all right. Elon trying to 3D print organs. Yes, that's actually a big effort in space, and a big reason for microgravity industries is the organ 3D printing. As a matter of fact, I forgot to mention that in my last in a recent episode that I did about the industrialization of space. 3D printing organs is a huge thing that is much more doable in microgravity. So therefore, the industrialization of near Earth orbit and that sort of thing. Okay. Seeker of Knowledge is talking about mini cattle, mini goats, chicken, rabbits to homestead Mars, fresh meat, cheese, milk, and eggs. Yes, once again, we've talked a little bit about that. We've talked, about the fact that we bring as many different types of food that we're familiar with along for the ride in the long run, regardless of what it costs us. And once again, the Starship simplifies all of this. If the cost per kilogram drops tremendously, it allows for the possibility of bringing this sort of stuff. And the more you can diversify our diet and make it something that people are more used to, and so therefore something that they're more comfortable with, and something that they're going to enjoy more, the better it's going to be on that colony. And the more natural it's going to feel. I really do think that that's a possibility. Oh my, how about that? Somebody just put up a cats in zero gravity. I am going to have to watch that. That's going to be interesting. Somebody obviously did that on the on those planes that briefly simulate gravity. The cyclers are Buzz Aldrin's idea. It says Johnny. Hi, Johnny Spacer, by the way. He has a good book about them. Very interesting. Very interesting. Are they a Mars thing or a Moon thing? I'm curious about that. But in any event, I guess I need to have a look a little bit more at that. Chickens could evolve into dragons on Mars. Okay. Is the Martian economy actually possible? What can Mars provide that Earth can't? Or are near Earth objects a better prospect? As I have mentioned before, excuse me, the asteroid belt is much more accessible from a delta V standpoint than it is from Earth. Way more accessible. And so as a result, there are things in the asteroid belt in terms of precious metals and all kinds of other things that the Earth could really use, that are more easily accessed by Martians than the moon is from Earth, because again of this massive gravity pull that we have to deal with here. They don't have to deal with it nearly as much on Mars. So the delta V requirements out to the asteroid belt are a lot easier from Mars. So that's their economy, in my opinion, or the biggest economy is the wealth that they can get out of the asteroid belt. It'll take some effort. It'll take investment. It will take time. But there are certain types of rare metals, especially on Earth, that are very difficult to get at, that are in very short supply, that we can probably find in great quantities in the asteroid belt. And I did a video on that a very long time ago now, it feels like, about 16 Psyche, and the huge mineral value that asteroid has. And once again, it would have to be carefully handled because of the nature of the economy. You wouldn't want to dump it on the economy, but still, if they did it carefully and intelligently, I think that that would be a huge, huge industry for them. Okay, and Johnny Spacer, by the way, just put zero G mice on there as well. So once again, guys, all of this is on the Discord server. So Patreon member equals Discord server. And just to remind you once again, I'll say this one more time. I'm about to release my first exclusive video only for Discord/Patreon folks. And that's going to be released within the next few hours. So in any event, lots of reasons to join, and all that is there. Okay, so and I keep saying this because I keep seeing the ticker go up. We're up to 216 people watching, so some folks may not have heard this. So in any event, I did want to make certain that I had mentioned that. Another link was just put on that that some hardy folks survived in space for 3 years. And is it proof of transpermia? Well, I do indeed believe that transpermia is not only possible, but a reality. After talking to Dr. Levin for a while, I became pretty doggone convinced that that's what's going to be going on. So, and another space nut just pointed out that his diet is vegan. Yes, vegans will have the easiest time, I think. Okay, so Starship becomes a version of Noah's Ark, carrying many animals on board for the ride, says Sanatogen. So, and once again, I may be mispronouncing that, but in any event, yeah, it could be. And once again, Starship provides the avenue for that Noah's Ark, don't they? For that lifeboat that we keep talking about. But so far, it seems like just about everybody is talking about Mars. Everybody's talking about maybe Moon first to teach us some lessons, to teach us how to colonize Mars, but that Mars should be the first place that we go to. That seems to be almost a complete consensus, interestingly enough. And by the way, that includes myself. Very interesting, because I know that there's a lot of people who think that we should be going to Venus. So I'd be very interested in seeing if there's any of those folks out there. But in any event, should we as taxpayers incentivize solar system colonization, knowing the gains it will feed back to us on Earth, a bit like sponsoring the companies and the people who spread out and colonize the Earth? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, we should do that. Absolutely, Framrick. The amount of money that our economies have, the amount of taxpayer money that there is, the incentives that should be provided. I mean, NASA just got the seed money that they were going to give out to start the first commercial space station. That basically got cut off by Congress. Why? Really? Why? I mean, we weren't talking a ton of money here. We were talking less than $1 billion. And in the American economy, that's absurd. That's a tiny drop in the bucket. And it got turned down and for something else that they thought was more important. It's insane. And we absolutely need to change that. And incentives and seed money need to be offered. We shouldn't wait for it, because we're probably not going to get it. I hate to be so cynical about that, but I don't think we are. I think that companies need to go for it on their own, and they're going to make a huge profit when they do. And once again, Elon seems to get that. I wish more people did. Okay. Saturn's rings, wide chunks of water ice, a reaction steam engine could move a miles long chunk of water to Mars. Once again, I would say, seeker of knowledge, Mars has a lot of water as it is. I mean, maybe eventually there might be a need for that, but I would say, and it is a little bit further, but when it comes down to it, if we're talking Saturn's a long ways away anyway. I would say a huge, and by the way, I'm curious if you got that from a short story called The Martian Way, because that's what happened in that story, where they moved a huge chunk of Saturnian water ice to Mars when it was thought that there was no water on Mars, to provide Mars with water. That could go to Venus instead. We could put it in orbit around Venus and mine that. I think that might make a little bit more that might make a little bit more sense if we're going to go all the way out to Saturn anyway, because Venus doesn't have any water. And the ways of extracting water there are pretty doggone difficult. So might be a better option. I like the idea. I just think Venus might be a better target. Who owns the let's see here, used embryos instead? Yes, well, it depends on the embryo and their gestation period and whether or not we can keep them alive. But yeah, that obviously is more efficient when it comes to transporting animals. Who owns the homestead that people on land and develop, the person, the company, the nation, or the United Nations, says Framrick? Well, once again, I'm a big fan of the Martian way. I think that if these people go out there, excuse me, and risk their lives and colonize this world, then they have the right to set up their own government and establish their own way of who determines ownership. I don't think that nations should have anything to do with it. I think they should offer an incentive because there's money in it. There's a return on that investment. But I don't think that they should own it. That's just a personal opinion anyway, because the British invested a hell of a lot in the American colonies, and it ended up losing it. So in any event, I would say that that the Martians should have the right to be independent if they go through all the effort to be self-sustaining. Now, if they're not self-sustaining, then it might be a different story. Okay, a lottery system would help pay for space expansion. That's a great idea, Seeker of Knowledge. Why not? Look how much money lotteries have generated already. Dear Lord, I think that would be a great idea. I like that. Okay. Solar powered satellites for the moon and Mars to help the colonies and exploration grow, Framrick says, and I agree completely. Dyson dots, as they are sometimes called, solar power is way more efficient in space than it is on Earth or in any place that has an atmosphere and a nighttime, for that matter. So that being the case, I would say that would be a good idea. Johnny Spacer, would it evaporate? Is it going to get close enough to go through cometary evaporation? I don't know. Comets have gone into very close orbits around the sun and don't evaporate. That would be an interesting calculation to do, to see whether or not how quickly the ice would go in orbit around Venus. Once again, I'm not sure how close it gets up. Seeker of Knowledge says I guessed right on the Martian way. So in any event, I would be interested to see what the case is. Framrick, thank you so much, by the way. It looks like you're off. So in any event, and yes, you did invest, but you love us, don't you? Yes, we've become the best of friends as time has gone on, and hopefully that continues into the future. Okay, artificial wombs for animals. We can raise cows and harvest their flatulence for methane fuel for starships. Yes, that is actually true. Hi, Cully. Nice to see you again. I appreciate you being here. And we still got 20, a little bit more than 20 minutes left. Sulfuric acid, what would it take to neutralize that rain, says Seeker of Knowledge. And Framrick had one final word. I'm going to throw this in real quick since he's about to go. Let's do this thing. And I agree. Let's do this. Okay. Yes, there is a process to convert sulfuric acid into water. Somebody shared the chemical process with me. Man, there's a lot of chemical processes involved in that. That's a lot of chemistry just to get drinking water. I don't know. It seems to me that there's got to be another way to make that happen. But once again, who knows? Maybe we can find a way to do it. And somebody brought it up. There's a comment actually on one of my recent videos that said that if we discover life on Venus, we may find out ways that they extract water out of the sulfuric acid, that the microbes find water in the sulfuric acid, can survive the process, and they have found a way to get water that way. And they teach us how to do it. Maybe there's a natural process to get water out of sulfuric acid that's created by these little bugs. Who knows? And if so, we can use them. Wouldn't that be incredible? And wouldn't it also contribute to the whole idea that we're all part of the big ecosphere that spans across the solar system? Wouldn't that be a mind-blowing thing that would just fly in the face of everything that we've always believed, that Earth is the only place that has any kind of life? And instead we discover that we're part of a huge ecosphere and life is everywhere in the solar system. I think that would be an amazing thing. Okay, waxy microbes. Yeah, life will find a way, says Framrick. It will indeed. It will indeed. That's my opinion anyway. I think that life is a very natural part of the cosmos. It's more common than we think, and it finds ways to develop and survive in ways that we have yet to determine. And it's already been theorized, and there's very strong indications that it exists. Even life like methanogenic life that we, that doesn't even breathe air, guess what? All of the conditions that were predicted by exobiologists about methanogenic life when the atmosphere was examined and spectrographic analyses taken, all of these preconditions were met for the existence of methanogenic life. I bet that blew a lot of minds. And yet, well, we got something going to Titan sometime soon. Hopefully we have some sort of life detection equipment on board, or a camera or something. We had a camera before, but hopefully we've got something a little bit better this next time. Okay, Johnny, we got more people typing. So I get a brief break once again. Don't forget, like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys tuning in and the numbers that you are. It's awesome. We still have more than 15 minutes. Mars, Venus, then on to Europa and Enceladus. I would say yes, except perhaps we add the asteroid belt into that process somehow. But nevertheless, I would say actually Titan is better than Europa. Europa may have for one thing, the radiation is high there. There is a trailing area of Europa because of the nature of the Jovian radiation. It doesn't take as much bombardment from Jovian radiation as the rest of Europa, and also Europa is tidally locked, and so as a result, it doesn't rotate, and so therefore that same area remains with much lower radiation counts than the rest of it. But Europa does appear to be very dynamic. It seems to have very active plate tectonics. That could make it very dangerous. I would say Titan might actually be safer. Okay, so in any event, settling, and as far as Jupiter is concerned, Callisto, I think is better, or Ganymede. Either one is better than Europa simply because of the radiation. Johnny Spacer says, settling Mars is a better option than Venus because nearly all the resources will be easily accessible. Whereas on Venus, we have a veritable hell below us. That is true. That's very true. Sorry, I've got a dry throat. That is true. Getting raw materials will be difficult. It could be argued that if we can get a nuclear submarine down to the depths and the pressures that they can survive, we might be able to get some sort of automated mining machines down that deep, but still it would be really tough. 3:42 a.m. Tiranasazi, I can't believe you that you hung around as long as you did. Really, geez, thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys. You're amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this and participating and helping the channel. Blows my mind. Thank you so much. Really owe a lot to you guys. Okay, so first boots on Mars, guess when, and we'll not hold you to it. When will we get the first boots on Mars? My guess is 2028. That's my guess. I'm going a little bit further back than 2030. I'm saying 2028 before we get the Starship to a point to where it's going to be safe enough for humans going to Mars. That's just a shot in the dark. I think that Elon will be able to beat out NASA's estimates and at least get humans on Mars by 2028. And who knows, may do it sooner, but that's my guess for humans, 2028. Excuse me, crew sizes for the first missions, 4, 10, 20. I'd say about a dozen. Something as big as the Starship, we really should take advantage of it. I don't think we should just have a few astronauts. Of course, we are risking a lot of people when we do that. But at the same time, I mean, we risked 7 every time we put the space shuttle up. Once we have the Starship really thoroughly tested, and of course, this is assuming that we're going to be putting people on the Starship after the Starship has successfully landed on the surface of Mars multiple times. So I think that we can afford to risk a larger number. I'd say around a dozen. And yes, I do remember the Heinlein book, Farmer in the Sky. It was really good. 6 says going ballistic, enough redundancy, but not too much in the way of resources needed. 6 is a good number. Yeah. I'd say that might be decent. I guess I like larger numbers for a bigger ship. Okay, up and then there's a Starship speculation link that was put up there. And for those of you who are not part of Discord, it's Mike Lepage or Lepage Starship design speculation. I definitely will check out that link. Okay, so we've got more folks typing. In the meantime, once again, first exclusive video for Patreon members coming up really soon. I almost have it done. I was planning on having it done before the live stream, but we're going to have it done soon. A wormhole alien asks, can't a Falcon Heavy deliver payloads to Mars? Yes, it can. Not a lot, but it can get payloads to Mars. That was the original plan, was the Red Dragon, as it was called. The whole idea was getting humans to Mars using the Falcon Heavy, but it was determined to be too difficult, too expensive, and so that's when they abandoned it and went for the Starship. Where's the best place to land on Mars? The plains or Olympus Mons? In the middle of the caldera on Olympus Mons, we'd have to do a powered landing. There wouldn't be enough atmosphere to slow us down way the hell up there. I guess the safer places would be in areas that are, that have already been selected by SpaceX. I think that that those regions make sense. They're flat. There's a lot of water, subsurface glaciation, that sort of thing. That makes the safest place to put people on Mars. although I am a big fan of the Valles Marineris, simply because it is huge. And there are large areas that are pretty flat there too. And it is a lot more of an exciting area to explore. I think it would get people excited. At the same time, there would be more dangers involved. There's also strong evidence for the existence of water in the Valles Marineris, but nevertheless, um, I think that the sites that have been chosen thus far by SpaceX are pretty good, but I think that we should also have a backup in a different location. And I did do a video about that, having the Valles Marineris as a backup location to the main ones. Excuse me. Okay. Johnny Spacer says a dozen astronauts on the first Starship crewed flight to Mars, organized like an Army Special Forces Alpha team, all different specializations that cross train each other. That's a good idea, Johnny Spacer. I like that. The prime landing spot is supposed to be the Arcadia Planitia. Yes, that is true, which is not too far away from Olympus Mons, by the way. I would say actually there's a pretty good chance that you can see it from there. But it is a very flat area with a lot of subglaciation. What would be the minimum time commitment and the maximum for a Mars mission? We are talking about a long stretch of time before the planets are back in alignment again for another launch. I think we're talking a couple of years, depending on how we do it. There are other options, like using the Venus option. That is that could allow for the possibility of a shorter journey, and that is to say, using Venus, going that route, using Venus as a slingshot, going to Mars, and then coming back the same way. You could do a mission for a month or so that way. Or at least that's the idea that was put forward, and I did a video on that too. Oh, thank you, Framrick. Looking forward to blowing the Boeing Mug Club up. Subscribers, start your engines. Yes, 40,000 subscribers, and this dies a horrible death. Okay. Do you know or who has or who's taken over the Bigelow B330? Secret of knowledge, in my opinion, the Bigelow modules, the technology for them have been taken over by Sierra Nevada. They're using the same kind of technology for their own proposals. So I think that they seem to be embracing the technology. Yes, I need a Coke sponsorship. I suppose I do, don't I? Okay, so yeah, I would say Sierra Nevada seems to be the most interested in doing things that way with inflatable modules. But I don't know if they've taken over the big ones or not. I really hope that Bigelow somehow bounces back. Bounces back inflatable modules. Just made a joke. Okay. I really hope that they're able to recover somehow, or somebody buys them out or something like that. Oh wow. Another space nut just offered to teach me how to turn the mug into a rocket engine. Wow, that would be cool. Who knows? Yeah, that would be neat. Let's see if we can make that happen. It's the only way the Starliner's gonna fly properly. How about that? All right. So in any event, I had to put another dig in on Boeing. I never get tired of that. It's just so fun. Okay. We got a lot of people talking, lots of people talking, and lots of people tuned in still. Thank you so much. You could load several on a Starship and instant space station. Yep. I did talk about that. That you could that the largest version of the Bigelow is 100 tons. And it has an enormous amount of space, and it can fit in the Starship. As a matter of fact, I think the thing was designed with the Starship in mind. And that would be a massive space station in of itself. It would have all of the habitation space of the Starship, including all of the fuel tanks and everything, plus a little bit more besides. It would be a huge space station. And by the way, the smaller ones, the 330s, two of those can get crammed into the fairing of a Falcon Heavy. That's how small these things are, or how compact they are. They're such a neat idea. I'm so upset that this happened to Bigelow. I don't know. A timing issue? I'm really not sure what happened. So in any event. Okay, so the Crew Dragon 1 mission in October. Whoops, I lost my connection for a second. Am I okay? I guess we lost connection slightly, but I think we're all right. We will get there eventually. As to when, that's a difficult question as to at what point. But to get back to the topic, I think it'll be another reminder that we already have a reliable way of getting humans to the ISS. That the Starliner is unnecessary, especially at $90 million a seat is what that's going to cost to get astronauts into orbit. Talk about wasting money. When we need money, seed money for space stations and other things, why is NASA sinking money into this stupid thing? We need to dump it. Of course, I've been saying that since I started this channel. Physical fitness minimums and maximums for Mars mission, pre-training minimum and maximum agencies. Will the Space Force have a physical fitness and battery of coordination and mental aptitude exams? And the Space Force entry exams and physical fitness tests, something you could post. I don't know about the Space Force. Currently, the Space Force is not a humans in space kind of operation, although that may change. It's hard to say. As far as Mars pre-training is concerned, if John Glenn can do it in his 70s, so can anybody else. As long as they can meet the physical requirements, why not? If John Glenn can go up in the space shuttle, then why can't somebody else in their 70s doing it? when you'd rather see my coffee cup going ballistic says going ballistic. Well, thank you very much. That is a higher cost than the Russians were charging, says Seeker of Knowledge. That is very true. It is actually cheaper to send an astronaut up on the Soyuz than it is to send astronauts up on the Starliner. It's stupid. Why are we doing this? It's driving me nuts. There's absolutely no reason for us to continue this. Aside from a backup, but I've already talked about what I think should be a backup, and it's not the Starliner. But we'll keep going. That's not the topic. So in any event, because he was John friggin' Glenn, that is true. That is one of the reasons. But you know what? I still think he made it. I still think he accomplished what he needed to accomplish, and he made it out of the experience just fine. Granted, he was in great physical shape before, but still, he was in his 70s and he still did it. So I'd say it's more, physical requirements than age. And a lot of people criticize that, by the way. It got me really angry at the time, by the way, when people, the media and everything were coming down on sending John Glenn into orbit as if it was some kind of publicity stunt. No, it wasn't. It was to demonstrate that a 70-plus-year-old person could go into orbit and come back. That's something that we needed to know. It didn't have to be, it wasn't a publicity stunt. That's just idiotic. Another thing for me to get angry about. Okay, so we're running out of time. I suppose that's why I'm going off topic. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Okay, to pair up with Overlook Horizon to send the coffee mug into the stratosphere. Come crashing down just like Boeing. Okay, make sure, Secret of Knowledge is adding, make sure the landing is filmed in super slow motion. Okay, so in any event, we are not quite done, although I guess we're getting pretty close. But in any event, we a couple more. So right now, it sounds like the consensus is Moon to prove the technologies, to gain the necessary knowledge and experience, and then Mars as the first place that we actually colonize. Sounds like something you could get the cup to a couple thousand feet. Oh dear Lord, I'd probably screw it up. But in any event, a cryo pressure test on the Boeing bug. Well, it's gonna look like it, that's for sure. Okay, guys. So in any event, this was so much fun. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. We got one more person typing. Let's see, a couple more people typing. I'm going to let this come in, and this will be it. This will be it. Moon to get tech and practice, Mars to get the colony, Venus to do the research. Yep. It sounds like that this has been the consensus of this particular forum that we've done today. It's been great fun. You guys know how to participate in the next one. And by the way, very soon I'm going to be releasing a members only exclusive video. So keep your eyes open for that. It's going to be some extras from my visit to Cape Canaveral, a lot of extra stuff from the Kennedy Space Center and from Space View Park, and some facts about all of that. Exclusive only to members of the Discord community. So in any event, you know how to do it. You know how to be part of it. And thank you so much to those who supported this, and also to those who tuned in today to watch. I really appreciate it. So until we're ready to colonize that first planet and make that all important decision as to what's going to be the first lifeboat for the human race, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.